Can professional B2B sales be outsourced? Good question. We've talked about this a lot on the Selling Well podcast over the years. And most of the time, the answer was no, in my view, anyway. Finally, we found a model that actually works. And that's why I think you can find today's podcast so interesting. Because today we're talking with Tammy Gillis, and Tammy is the author of Room to Grow, Not Leaving Sales to Chance. Tammy's also the founder and CEO of Gillis Consulting and Training, and they're an outsourced sales provider to the hospitality industry and a very large one. And what's really unique about their model is the one gap on most outsourced sales models is that the outsourcing firm does not understand the industry and the client as well as that actual host company. Tammy's model fixes that because they have only got experts working on their sales team, and they actually know more than many of their clients about how to sell professionally at the B2B level for hospitality. That's the interesting part of this model we're going to get into today. The other thing that's really interesting, although Room to Grow, Tammy's book, is focused on the hospitality industry, it absolutely addresses most challenges and opportunities in professional B2B sales. The one thing that struck me so much was how applicable this is to every industry in B2B sales, not just hospitality. It's a very, very well-written book. It's concise but powerful. Today, we talk about everything, Tammy and I, from the book to the outsourcing model to the importance of being relentless about understanding how to help your clients and prospects achieve better business outcomes. Today's conversation was amazingly interesting to me, folks. I certainly learned a few new things today. I hope you will too. And if you like today's podcast, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast because that really matters to us. And it actually helps us get great guests like Tammy. Here she is, Tammy Gillis. Hey, Tammy, welcome to the show. It's so great to see you again.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for saying that. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today. And I got to say, I was super excited to chat with you today for two reasons. So first of all, I'm a huge fan of the book. And so those who listen frequently know, team, the way we do this podcast is actually I read almost everything out there. And then when I read these amazing books, I actually go after the author to see if I can get them to join the show and coerce them into the show. And one of the amazing things, the book we're going to be talking about here today is Room to Grow, Not Leaving Sales to Chance by Tammy Gillis. Fantastic book. And
Thank
one of the
you.
things that just hit me, you are a perfect example of, that the reverse of the Mark Twain quote. I wrote you a long letter. If I had more time, I would have written you a short letter. You actually took the time and wrote the short letter, but it's so great. It's just so well put together, so concise. One of the things that's very interesting, team, and you'll have the link to buy the book in the show notes. This isn't a book just about selling in the hospitality industry, although Tammy, I know that's what you wrote. It's a book about selling because the one thing that became so clear to me, every time you identified an issue or a challenge or what's happening in sales, and we'll get into it, you talked about it being applicable in the hospitality industry. We know with all of our clients, it's applicable everywhere in sales.
It is. Any B2B sales for sure.
Absolutely. And team, by the way, I'm not the only one who loved this book. Filled with tons of rock solid strategies and practical advice, just an amazing testimonial on the cover of the book, Jill Conrath. So one of the biggest names in our industry just gave a wonderful testimonial. And then the second thing we're going to talk about, which I think is really interesting, we've talked about that a lot on this show, Tammy, is outsourced sales models. That's what your business is. It's, of course, outsourced sales within the hospitality industry and a very big, flourishing business, adding huge value to the clients you work with. So we'll talk about that as well. But maybe to start, what's the short story on your journey? How did we actually get here?
I think when you've been doing it well, first of all, thank you for that lovely introduction. And I think when you've been doing it as long as we have, I don't know if there's a short version, but I will say that I'm one of those accidental salespeople, and I talk about it in the book. is that, I mean, I didn't grow up saying I want to be a salesperson.
Yeah.
Rarely anybody even knows what that is and what that looks like. And I went to school for hospitality, but I still didn't know what sales meant. But I was out of at a college, finished a contract position at U of T, helping them in their events department. And then my professor said, hey, the Hilton Toronto Airport's looking for a corporate sales manager. And I threw your name in the ring. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but sure. So talk about faking it until you make it. I showed up, I got the job. 30 years later, I'm still in sales. Can't imagine any other profession. And I think, the reason I'm still here is because there's a better way to do it versus when I was onboarded 30 some years ago.
Mm.
But I'm dedicated to the profession. I love it. It's about people. I think it's a skilled trade, but it's not treated like a skilled trade in a profession. That's why I love your podcast, is because you bring on really smart people who are dedicated to elevating the profession. And I've just been so fortunate. It was the greatest accident professionally to ever happen to me. And I hope to be doing it, to the end of my career.
And you brought us so many things, Tammy, that are worth unpacking a little bit. But let's just go down a bit of a tangent, the profession. So I just came off Andy Paul's podcast, and he was saying he was looking for big ideas in sales. And I think the question was, if we could start it all over, what would you do? If we could start, because he listed a bunch of things not working very well in professional sales today. And he said, if you could start it over, what would you do? But I didn't know the question was coming. So boom, it hit me. And I just went, I'd make it a profession. You have to get certified and you need ongoing training, like an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor,
Yes.
a real estate
A
agent,
chef. Yeah.
a project manager. How is this any different? What are your thoughts on that?
In the hospitality industry, and I don't think other verticals are any different, unless it's really big, complex B2B stuff, they might treat it differently. It's basically, are you a good talker? Are you good with people? And do you know your product or service? You'll make a great salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are all the wrong things to look for, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to do more listening than talking. It is not about our product or service. It's actually what our product or service enables the customers to do. And that's
Yes.
what gets missed is ad nauseum, salespeople are told, whether it was 30 years ago or current state, know your product, know your service, and know your competitors, as opposed to what you're buying or what the client is buying isn't what you're selling. So go figure that out. So it still perplexes me to this day that we think about transactional sales and we think we're selling a product or service. But I think it's all the mindset and how we onboard sellers, and how I was onboarded with Hilton 30 some years ago. And listen,
Yep.
the 10 years with Hilton, they were the best 10 years of my professional career. But it was just about rates, dates, and space, and transactional selling. And not much has changed, sadly. So it should be a profession, because it is an art and a science, especially with the availability of technology and data and all of these tools that should be together strategically with the fundamentals that never went away. It's this, kind of convergence of technology and fundamentals that we rarely see, that's missing from sales today.
Well, it's so interesting. There's a perfect example, team, of, in the book, Tammy, you say, hey, in hospitality, it's about a personality and being able to talk and knowing your product. We have SaaS people listening today. We have manufacturing businesses listening today, services businesses listening today. We see the same problem everywhere in professional sales.
Absolutely.
Their version of it, you're a CEO, so their version of it is you get blasted with emails that know nothing about you. They're just pitching product, and all they're trying to do is push for a demo. So in hospitality, We're going to do a tour. We're going to walk around and do a site tour. In technology, they're pushing for a demo, and it's talk, 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 me, the worst first date ever.
The
The
worst
worst.
first date ever, and there won't be a second date. And I can tell you, I get a lot of those emails from some of these technology companies, and I use them respectfully. I black out the name and the company, but I use those in our training with our team to say, this is how you don't prospect. This is how you don't rise above all the noise.
Yes.
And who's the connector and the translator between what they're selling and how it's going to help me? We need to be translators to translate the value proposition.
Yes.
And there is such a tremendous disconnect that it gives salespeople a bad name.
Well, you're absolutely right. And by the way, jokingly, I don't do it either. I can't do it, but I'd love to. We get hit 3 times a week by another sales training company trying to sell us sales training. We're sales training. Our website's not fantastic, but it screams we're sales trainers. Somebody
Yes.
just looked at the website.
Yeah,
Well, anything else?
exactly.
Sell
Big
us anything
hint.
else. Stop trying to sell us what we actually sell. So
So
there's
funny.
such a perfect example of, by the way, this is one of the reasons I love the book. The book, although I'm not, in the hospitality industry, and, every concept, every principle that you share, every idea, it's so universal for professional sales in general. But the other thing that's so important is it's so clearly laid out. And this is one of the
Thank
things that I
you.
think it's the magic of this book, because today I think there's so much on professional sales, whether it's internet platitudes, and ideas, or there's hundreds and hundreds of books that are great on professional sales, but many of them are they're either strategic or tactical, or they're very tactical on one idea.
Mm,
And so to help somebody who's getting into the profession, or somebody who's in the profession that wants to sort of recharge a little bit, I think your book's done a really nice job of just giving a general overview of the things we need to think about that could have a dramatic impact on what we're doing. There's no question in my mind, anybody in professional sales who wants to read Room to Grow, you're going to pull something from this that you can actually apply to you in your business, in your industry today.
thank you
So
so much. It was definitely a labor of love, that's for sure. And common sense, as you know, does not equal common practice. So I will often hear, oh my gosh, it was just such a great reminder of the
yeah,
fundamentals. But it goes to show that our mindset, if we're not intentional about what we're doing and how we're doing it, we quickly go back to that. I call it, I call it pitch slapping with a P, right?
yes.
So we're pitch slapping, and it's a habit. It's a formed habit that we have to exercise and fight against that current to feature dump.
So you lead to this so nicely. And by the way, your book is one of the easier, more enjoyable books to read. The hardest book I've ever read, team. It's a must read, but the most difficult book you reference Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And you
Okay.
talked about those habits,
Hmm.
the 150 cognitive biases. And that's one of the things that's so hard for behavioral change. And I love the way you say that. Common sense isn't common practice, because human beings are hardwired to save energy and not think about what we're doing. We're actually hardwired just to keep doing what we're doing.
Yep.
And you referenced it's Kahneman and Testaverde. I always forget Testaverde, but it's Kahneman and Testaverde's Nobel Prize winning Thinking Fast and Slow, where just take a pause. You talk about this in the Strategy Before Tactics chapter 4, saying think about what you're doing and then think about how to do it. But we all default to just jumping in. And that's where we love this podcast, team. If nothing else, taking a pause every once in a while when you listen to this and just say, do a little start, stop, continue for yourself. What's working, we're going to continue doing. What isn't working, but it's just become a habit for us, that maybe we'll take a pause and stop. And then what's something we hear about on this podcast? If you're going to invest the 45 minutes in listening to us today, just take 1, 2 things. Go, I wasn't doing that today, but I should start. Start, stop,
Great
continue
point.
to try and break those, cognitive biases that are so tough. So Tammy, the structure of the book, before we get to the outsourced model, structure of the book team, great chapter, A Perfect Storm. So written in 2021, right in the heart of COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Are you selling like it's 1990? Love it. Becoming a modern seller. Chapter 4 is strategy before tactics. Please, thank
It's the
you.
why, right? It's the why you're doing it, not the what.
Yes. Number 5, the sales reality. We'll talk about a few things there in a minute. 6, executing your sales plan. Number 7, to sales, all the sales leaders out there, business leaders, entrepreneurs, knowing what good looks like. And you touched on that beginning in terms of hiring. What are we hiring on? What skills and capabilities? And then you do reference our friend Daniel Pink a couple of times in the book. We love everything from Daniel Pink.
Fantastic.
Everybody's in sales. Final chapter of the book, chapter 8, everybody's in sales. And as everybody knows, we reference Daniel Pink on the show all the time. 1 in 9 people in a professional sales job today, probably more. And then of the 8 and 9 who aren't in a professional sales job, what percentage of their day is spent persuading somebody else to their point of view? 40% of their day.
Yes. Influencing internally and externally.
So let's get into just the timing. So interesting, Tammy, given of all the industries out there, hospitality has to be the industry that got most significantly hit during the pandemic. It has to be. But
it was devastating.
What was the timing? So it was released in 2021. Were you starting this before COVID, or did you just really get on it and use some of the time during COVID? Tell me about the timing of putting it together and then releasing it.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And it feels like 10 years ago, because so much has happened over that 4-year period. But I think for people in hospitality and travel, right? Airlines, anybody,
Yes.
event management, hotels for sure, but rental cars, travel agencies, anybody. 90% of the world stopped traveling the week of March 16th, 2020. Was that tattooed in my brain or what? And it impacted not only because we exclusively support the hospitality industry, but we lost 70% of our clients in 10 days because they no longer needed us to sell for them because nobody was traveling.
Right.
Some clients were shutting their doors. They had a mass exodus. We're losing millions of dollars a day in canceled bookings, future bookings. And so when they were going down their list and their P&L, they were saying, what contracts can I cancel? So we lost 70% of our business in 10 days and had to quickly say, and a good percentage, 90% of our business is in the US. So the US did not shut down the same way Canada did. And thank goodness, because that kept the lights on for us.
Right.
Because, we have clients in, Texas and, different states that still had travel. So we had to quickly say, who is traveling? How can we offer a level of services? Because there were traveling nurses, there was government organizations, medical organizations traveling because of the pandemic. So we had to let half our team go.
Tough.
Fortunately, within 4 months, everybody was brought back with care.
Nice.
And it was the most devastating. On one end, we're letting half our team go, knowing the impact it's going to have on them, while trying to still find business for the hotels that remained in our program. It was an insane time. So I thought about, as we stabilized back half of 2020, everybody thought that this COVID thing was just going to be 6 months, not
Right.
2 years, 3 years.
Right.
So I started, because I had time, although I was in the weeds and managing the day-to-day and trying to hang on to the business, I really started thinking about, how is our industry going to recover?
Nice.
Management companies, hotels, they let all their salespeople go. Big brands let 70% of their sales organization go. What is that going to look like when travelers start traveling again? Who are they going to reach out to?
Yes.
And there were a lot of things, and that's why the first chapter, The Perfect Storm, was so important because we were getting away with a lot as an industry
Yes.
prior to the pandemic because for 10 years, we were making a lot of money. There were international conventions. Every Fortune 500 company, had travelers. Tour groups were coming in, sports tournaments. So sellers on property didn't have to look too far to find business. They had a lot of incoming inquiries and they were
Yes.
very transactional. So they were using different muscles and they got away with being transactional because there was more business than they could manage. So when the world stops traveling and there's no business and you actually have to go from farming to hunting and going after business from market segments that you're not experienced in, that was a heavy lift for a lot of people. And so I knew all of these bad habits because part of our company, we also train people. And so even when times were good before COVID, I was getting in front of people saying, you're transactional, it's going to catch up, right? Like you're getting away with it. And
Yes.
so for me, writing the book and the timing was, obviously there was more of a sense of urgency for me to get this out to help the industry recover. That was really why I wanted. So I spent a year putting it together. And in fact, I thought, will it come out in time?
Hmm.
But in 2021, we were still in the throes of
Yes, we were.
COVID.
Yes.
And 2022 was the kind of year that revenge travel came back. And here's what happened. Travel came back before hotels had their teams in place. So the travel came back and hotels weren't ready for the big league. They weren't ready for it. They didn't have the people. People left the industry. Millions left the industry and decided this isn't recession proof. I
Right.
can go make more money somewhere else and not be treated the way that I was treated over COVID. So this to me was a recovery toolkit to help hotels get back on their feet. And we're still trying to get back on our feet. That's the crazy part. We're getting there, but sales teams are very much still smiling and dialing.
Well,
So I
we've
hadn't
talked.
planned on it. I hadn't planned on it, but it became very crystal clear to me in 2020 that something had to be done and I had the time to dedicate to it. And I made the time.
Well, again, when you talk about that environment, that high level, broad environment, economic environment for hospitality, I think there's a lot of industries today, Tammy, experiencing the exact same thing. So the SaaS industry, for example, you say we've been getting away with it. The SaaS industry had venture capital and private equity money flooding their
Mm,
organizations with sales and marketing personnel. Churn rates skyrocket. No one's hitting sales productivity. No one's hitting quotas anywhere close to it. Customers are feeling this impact because we have unskilled, overconfident people reaching out and wasting the time of a buyer. And now the buyer is coming back going, I'd actually rather just do most of this online. And a good
yes.
portion of buyers go, I prefer never to speak to a salesperson. So,
I'd rather
so,
root canal, right? They're thinking I would rather a root canal than engage with a salesperson.
so this is this kind of interesting thing, I think, where this question I was asked on another podcast seemed relevant, which is, there are a few metrics that keep screaming at us. We're not getting better. So
Mm,
are we plugging holes, or is there a way of looking at this in a different way so fewer people can become accidental salespeople? Would we have a different industry if you couldn't just fall into the job because you
mm.
have a pulse and I need to fill a body on my inside sales team? Would it be different if I actually had to go through a course for a year or two, have some certifications, do some ongoing training to maintain that certification? Over time, not overnight, but over time, would the buying community start to see us as truly the consultants we need to be successful?
So
Might be a
true.
different thing. Might end up in a different way. But let's keep on with the book because I really want to get to the outsourced model again. But let's pick another one. So we run through the different chapters here, folks. But Knowing what good looks like,
Mm,
I think, is still a really important thing for everybody listening today. So, whether you're a salesperson listening to this today, and thank you for doing so, when we talk about what good looks like, that's what we all have to sort of try and attain as lifelong learners. So, if we're going to be in this profession, we can talk about what does a great salesperson look like. And Tammy, you identify some great examples, by the way, in the book of what good isn't and what happens in interviews. And what I loved about the book was you lay out amazing questions for an interview,
mhm.
amazing questions for an
Thank
interview.
you.
And so folks, grab those questions, whatever industry you're in, grab those questions and use them. They're going to be helpful. But Tammy, tell me about the attributes of a great salesperson in your mind. And I've met your sales team and I've met your
Yes,
sales leaders. They are great.
thank you.
What do you look for when you go through, building out your team?
So for any organization looking to build a sales team, they have to be really clear on what is the role profile, right? So in our world, are they managing incoming inquiries? And again, this is very specific to hotels. Are they order takers and managing incoming inquiries? That requires a different mindset, that requires a different skill set. Are they having to grow existing accounts? Or are you hiring someone to do business development? And
Yes.
business development, which is you're hunting for business, you need to be strategic, you're looking at the comp set, where the business is currently sitting, what business you have, what business you don't have, how are you going to get to those decision makers? That's a very different skill set. And so for us, because we are 100% remote team, clients are hiring us to do their sales and to outsource their sales to us. We are not managing incoming inquiries. They can take care of that. They are not paying us and our skilled people to take a wedding booking. And in fact,
Yes.
when they're talking to us to say, what can Gillis do? I'm saying, we're not talking to brides. I'm not booking hockey teams. Let us go after the B2B decision makers that you may not have the experience or time to go after because it requires research, a business conversation, an understanding of the value proposition, and it could take 12 attempts to actually get on their calendar. So I think first of all, for those listening, what kind of role and profile are you looking for? What do you need them to do? What do you not need them to do? And part of the challenge in our industry is if a general manager at a hotel, most of them have a heavy operations background. The seller reports to them. They don't know what to look for, and they think all salespeople are good at all things. We're not good at all things, right? I have certain strengths when it comes to selling, and guess what? Cold calling was never one of my favorite things. I'm great at other things. So I
Mhm.
think you have to be really clear that you're not getting a unicorn who's going to be all things to all people. And so at Gillis, we need to have people who love the hunt, are scrappy, are resilient, are really good investigators. They are
Mm.
following the clues, putting the pieces of the puzzle together to say, why would this prospect benefit from hearing from me now? What's going on in their industry? Jill Conrath calls it trigger events, right?
Yes.
What's
Yes.
going on in their company that might be triggering travel? Is there a shutdown? Are they redesigning a new line for Toyota and there's a bunch of vendors coming in? Are they hiring? Are they firing? What's going on to cause travel? Those are trigger events. So there has to be some sleuthing that's going on as opposed to that transactional seller. So that's what we look for. We screen about 500 resumes a month,
Wow.
2 full-time people in HR. That is just, and with all due respect, I think when we first started 10 years ago, if someone applied and they had a really good, talk about knowing what good looks like, we really have a good idea 10 years later. But if we thought, oh, if you were an on-property seller, you're great. You can hide. You can hide being on property, or you could hide being in a big organization.
Yeah.
If your leader doesn't know what good looks like, if you're not being observed, if you're not being coached, if you don't have the right KPIs, it is crazy the transformation when people who make it on our team, and we call it the 1%, they sometimes have 15 years experience and still we are rewiring their brain to sell the way we need them to sell and to think the way we need them to think. And everyone on our team will say they have never been more trained and supported, or they've never been forced and challenged to think about sales the way we think about sales, which is a testament to our business model. Because if it was easy and if anyone could do it, our hotels wouldn't need to outsource it, right? So that's a long answer to your question. There's so much to unpack there, but knowing
Good
what
one.
good looks like, it depends. Everybody has to take the time to say, what is the role profile? Are they scrappy? Are they competitive? So here's a question when we're talking to folks. We'll say, are you competitive? No. What part of sales do you love? I love relationships. Well, how are
Yeah.
you going to do that to people you don't have relationships with?
Yes. Right.
How are you going to get to that point? Tell me you're a 12 out of 10 on the competitive scale and you like to win and you don't like to lose and that you're not giving up and you're not easily discouraged. Now we're talking about someone who isn't going to be afraid of rejection when they make 20 calls and they get a hold of 2 people out of the 20.
Yes.
So that's a really long answer. And then a lot of times it's gut. There's a bit of science, but there's some gut checks that are usually pretty accurate.
Well, there's that Nick. So, first of all, so much again to unpack there. We're going to get into it, but I love that Dr. Nick Morgan book. Can you hear me? Apparently we make impressions in milliseconds, and particularly in an interview, we'll make our impression of somebody in like 90 seconds or less. The rest of the hour we spend just finding data. So that gut is your emotional decision on somebody. And we can't make decisions without the emotional part of our brain. A lot of it's emotional. And in fact, unfortunately, there's some studies done with people who've had brain injuries that have damaged the emotional center of their brain, where their logical portion of their brain is still working perfectly. But if their emotional center of the brain has been damaged, they actually need 24/7 care because they can't make a single decision without that working.
Interesting.
They can't get dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
So I forget where I read that. I found that so interesting when we think of how people make decisions. But circling back here, you talked about a couple things that were so important there. One was, Tammy, you talked about we have to have a business conversation, not a sales conversation. And that leads to your chapter, which I love. Are you selling like it's 1990? The second thing, but business acumen, industry business acumen. Forget what my product is. What's going on with the business of the person I'm reaching out to? And we did a great exercise with a training client yesterday where they were targeting a large organization. We're going after the CEO there. We spent 6 minutes. So we asked the individual, what are you going to do? And they said, this is how I'm going to reach out. And we said, well, what point of interest do you have? And they shared one. And then we had about 9 people in a room spend 6 minutes each finding data that they could leverage. Then we just went around the room and said, okay, name 2 things you found that we could leverage to get through the door. Bang, bang. Unbelievable what we found.
Love it. Love it.
6 minutes, not an hour, not an hour and a half. It's not one of my, economic papers I was trying to get in university cramming for. 6 minutes, we can really find a point of interest that plays on that theory of reciprocity, and they understand it's about them. And you reference Dale Carnegie in the book. Again, all your references we love. Dale Carnegie, hey, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to make people interested in you.
Ah, great quote.
Beautiful. Yeah, and beautiful point that you raise in the book. So when we come back to this, the other thing is, team, this is an important one. We have been in markets where you could hide in professional sales. If you sold for Salesforce in the early 2000s, you were doing high-end order taking. If you sold for HubSpot after 2012, you were doing high-end order taking. God bless. I'm glad everybody had a good time. The challenge you have now, though, you may be unskilled and overconfident. We
Oh,
come across this a lot.
dangerous.
Tough, tough. It's like me in the kitchen. I have no idea what I'm doing, but for some reason, I believe I'm a master chef.
Of course. Yes.
Hard to teach someone like me, right? So I don't think I need to learn. I'm dropping pans, I'm breaking things, I'm flipping stuff that's not supposed to be flipped. I have no idea why I'm like
Yeah.
that.
The pizza delivery guy's on his way just in case, right?
He's on speed dial all
Yeah.
the time. But I think, team out there, these are really important things for us as an industry because these are the things in the aggregate that start to lead to the fact that the buyers have this impression of us.
Mm.
And this is what we've got to, all of us have got to improve the performance and the professionalism of what we do. And Tammy, I think it is a nice pivot into your core business model. And I'll be honest, we've talked about outsourcing sales a couple of times on the show. And
Okay.
until I came to your business and understood your business, I wasn't a fan of it at all because for the most part, the market's made up today of the major outsourcing of a sales function is outsourcing of SDR work,
Mm.
sales development work, but it's in the tech sector. And what happens is the organization builds a farm of individuals doing this, but they aren't your model. They're not your model. That model is they get a client. So it could be anything in technology. Then they hire new feet on the street. Then they try and ramp them up with industry and business acumen, but it's never as fast as if the company did it themselves. And so there's frequently a lunchbox letdown, is what we've seen. Now there's always exceptions. You crack the code the opposite way because you found an industry, hospitality, that can never really, outside of the top tier, largest organizations, they can't build a scalable core competency for doing this in-house. So instead of having one or two people do it off the side of the desk, you
Mm.
went and found industry professionals who go through rigorous interviewing process because they're experts. And not only do you deliver the function to the client, but you're also delivering expertise and knowledge because they have no idea how to do this in some cases properly because they just don't have the size and scale to get there. Was that intentional? Did you spot this intentionally, or was it just the passion of what you grew up doing?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, it'll be 11. As you know, I spent time at BlackBerry. I left the
Yeah.
industry. I said, "Oh, I'm burning out in hospitality. I need a break. I'm going to join a high-tech company. I'm going to slow down." Well, the joke was on me because this was 2007. So I spent 7 years at BlackBerry, left and came back and knew I wanted to get back in hospitality. So the first year and a half, I was training. I went back to my roots, and we still do training, but I went back to my roots and reached out to clients I had worked with. And I'd spent a year and a half training for a large brand. It's a franchise model. So they would bring me to their regional meetings, their annual conference. I built out 3 sales certification programs for
Nice.
front desk sales folks and their general managers. So I was really embedded with that organization, which was amazing. But every time I went out to train a general manager or an owner, they were a limited service hotel brand. And limited service meaning 80 rooms or less, no restaurant for the most part, no meeting space. It was really for that transient guest.
Yes.
Well, 80% of those hotels did not have property salespeople
Oh,
going after B2B business. A lot of people say, "What are you selling in a hotel?" So just for your audience to know, it's not a build it and you will come model. Yes, there's Expedia, Trivago, all of those, what we call OTAs, third party sites, and that can fill rooms. But that B2B business, Sunday to Thursday, if you've got a construction project in the backyard, if Toyota's there, if a major company's there, there is
yeah.
somebody on at that location that manages travel that you need to negotiate their travel program with. And so I went to our client and said, "You keep paying me, which is wonderful, to come and train your owners. but they can't execute when they go back on property. They don't have the time, they don't have the expertise. And I've worked on this model. And this was, so imagine 10 years ago. And it was still to this day, some owners and hotel GMs say, you have to be in market. You have to be
Mm,
tethered to the desk at a hotel. You can't sell remotely. But then COVID happened, and we proved to the world that you can sell anywhere. So I
yes.
took this model to Best Western. That was my big client at the time. They have 2,400 hotels in North America, over
Wow.
4,000. And I said, if they're not making money, you're not making money. You've got all
Right.
these programs, but they're not activating it. And so they gave us, 8 of their underperforming hotels as a pilot. And, 6 months later, we had 8x, 10x the ROI, improve the model. That's how it started. And then we were kind of building the plane while we were flying it, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, sure it does.
And then we're like, well, we better get a CRM. We better bring on a director of ops to start building out all these SOPs.
Yes.
So it didn't start out strategic. I was in the weeds every day managing the business until we got to a point where you can start giving pieces of it. You get to bring in the directors of sales, the BI people, the sales ops people on the team. And now here we are 10 years later with what I feel is a best in class sales model, because we've got incredible leaders whom you've met who oversee the execution of our sales folks.
Yes.
And we've got the sales operations people like Nikki and her team who are making sure we've got the reporting, the processes, the tools, the accountability, and HR to make sure that we're constantly filling our funnel with good candidates. So
Yes.
it's been an incredible 10 years of continuing to get better and better and better and prove this business model. So it started out, hey, I hope this can work, to us having today over 220 hotels in our program, and really having a strong, great, I'm trying to sound modest, some brand recognition in the industry that I'm really, really proud of.
Well, everything's about the result you provide for a client. 8, 10x a result for a client. That's the only way a business is going to succeed. We actually have to provide results. So first of all, no need to sound modest. I've met your leadership team. They're
Yeah,
dynamite.
pretty amazing. Yes.
It's just fantastic. But this is where this outsourced model, because this comes up a lot. There's nothing but entrepreneurs out there. Most entrepreneurs don't grow up in sales. So
Mm,
they're going to grow up if, they're application developers, they create code, they want to productize it and sell it. Or, they're an engineer, they come up with a product, they have a manufacturing firm, they want to sell it. No one grows up as an entrepreneur in sales, and they go through years of what the hospitality industry goes through, where they're just churning through salespeople, and they just don't understand why. But they're your avatars you reference in chapter 2. The Jack, if you build it, they will come. That applies to a hotel. It also applies to most CEOs of technology companies, because
true.
they love their product. They're
Yes.
shocked. They're just flabbergasted that not everybody buys their product, because they know the 9 reasons it's better than the next one. But the best product never wins, or rarely wins. It's the best sales organization that actually wins.
So true.
So this model where you've cracked the code by saying we found this niche where they can rarely do they get scale, and they need the help, so we can outsource it, but we actually understand their customer. We already grew up knowing their product, but we know their customer. That's what these outsourced SDR farms never get to. They start to learn the product a little bit, but they're new into business. They don't understand the corporate client. They don't have that business acumen. They can't be viewed as a consultant reaching out. They never get to that level of trusted advisor. So it's just too hard. So it's a lot of churn, and it never had seemed to work out. This is the first time I've seen it, but obviously you folks are absolutely killing it, and power to you.
Well,
So
and I would say thank you for that. And I would say we are exclusive to hospitality. This is all we know. We've been approached throughout the years by other companies saying, well, you do outsource sales. And there's enough business in hospitality, and that's where my passion is. And if I've never sold for another industry, I don't want to go and get distracted from just from a pure financial point of view. This is we
yes,
live and breathe hospitality, and I can relate to it as the CEO. I know what good looks like. I don't know what
yeah,
good looks like for other industries. And the people that we attract are best in class. And part of the scale that you talk about, Mark, is one of the value propositions. Obviously, it's at 8x to 10x, but the infrastructure, we're a team of 55 people. The infrastructure is also what our clients are buying into. It's not just that one seller who's giving fractional sales support. They're getting my time, they're getting our senior director's time, they're getting access to tools, analytics, an entire system that
yes.
would be so cost prohibitive. So this model allows them to run their business, take care of their employees, take care of their clients while we keep their sales funnel flowing with new accounts coming in. So we take that responsibility very seriously. And I couldn't fake it by selling for another industry. There's no other industry that would light me up as much or motivate me as much. So that's why I think we have this real niche business model, because we know who we are and we know why we do it and who we do it for, which is
Awesome.
critical.
Just awesome. By the way, the other thing I think that that firm gets is they're actually getting access to the collaboration of 54 other people on the team.
Yes.
I've been in the room with your leaders. They're highly collaborative. And we believe in the power of teamwork and collaboration. So if managed and facilitated well, the power of the experience, the insight, the market knowledge, the understanding of the trends in the industry, bringing that to each and every client, just shocking. Well, frankly, that's why people pay McKinsey or Monitor or Boston Consulting Group, you name it, whatever strategic advisory firm is, they're paying for that market knowledge and insight.
It's true. It's
You actually
absolutely true.
you bring it to bear with insight in terms of what's going on with 250 hotels. That's a lot of knowledge.
It's a lot of knowledge in terms of here's who's traveling, here's what they're saying, here's the future trends that we share. And also all of those accounts, all of those prospects, when a client, let's say in Peterborough, Ontario, is we're onboarding a hotel there and they have ABC accounts in their backyard, chances are, unless they're one-off accounts that only reside in that market, we are working with that account across our portfolio. So
Yeah,
we know the
perfect.
decision makers, we're shortening the sales cycle, and we're doing all the stuff that they don't want to do. And I think one thing I'm so proud of, we are just going through our quarterly business reviews. So our directors of sales, our leaders who you've met, they each, they have individual pods. That's how we're structured. They have up to 10 area sales managers, 60 hotels they manage. And for our clients that have multiple hotels, we have QBRs.
Yes.
I am blown away, and we have prep calls for the QBRs, then I attend as many QBRs as possible. The value and insights that our directors of sales are bringing to the QBRs, the level of care and accountability that our team brings to say, we're protecting your investment. It is something that, doesn't exist. And I beam with pride because this is over and above their day-to-day job. Our DOSs are putting in a ton of time, but I see the retention. Our client retention continues to increase because they trust that they trust us with their investment. They see the results and they see the care and the communication.
I think the lesson learned for me and for everybody listening today is what are we all doing to take care of our clients with this level of unnatural focus and intensity, because all of our businesses exist only because of our clients. So if we're not as focused on and relentless to bring that much value to our clients every day in every conversation, somebody else will.
Someone else will.
And
That's my healthy paranoia. I say it's healthy paranoia. I don't know if my husband would agree, but
that's right.
I definitely have healthy paranoia about don't change for the sake of it, but we need to be constantly elevating and making sure that we're bringing the best to the business every single day.
Well, one of your, I love the quotes at the beginning of your chapters, by the way, and you quote Mark Cuban, you know, the one thing in life you can control is effort.
I love Mark Cuban.
God, love that quote.
Yeah.
And so when we start to think about everything we talked about here today, heaven forbid the, you know, pandemic and all these different things. First of all, you so much have that entrepreneur's mindset where something happens, doesn't matter what happened, you're about the future. There's always this opportunity. Every crisis really is an opportunity. And even in the heart of it, you were going, we're going to come out of this and these people are going to be understaffed and this is an opportunity. But team, when we think of what we're doing every day as professional salespeople, I think there's a massive opportunity. The opportunity is just to stand out. And if
So true.
we can stand out if we just go that extra effort to understand, even take just from today, business acumen. What are we watching? What are we reading? Which podcasts do we listen to elevate our, what are we, you know, Room to Grow is the book to read. What are we reading and learning so that we have more insight and knowledge that we can bring to our clients and prospects so that actually they can run better businesses, because good things will happen for us if we can do that. So that might be a key thing, team, to leave in the show notes here today. The one thing in life you can control is efforts. But the second thing is, Tammy, believe it or not, we're coming to the top of the hour. So thank you so much for
This
joining
was
us here
so
today.
fun. We could talk for hours, as we always do. And listen, I have about 20 books I have to read thanks to you and your Selling Well podcast, because you bring on great guests and so many good recommendations. So thank you for all of your work in elevating this profession. I learn from you every day.
Oh, thanks, Tammy. Great guests like the one we have today.
Thank you,
So
everyone.
thank you so much, Tammy. And by the way, Tammy, how do people learn more about Gillis and you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and that is really the one social that I dedicate time to, simply because our product isn't, Instagram and Snapchat and all that good stuff. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm an active contributor there, and gillissales.com. So if you want to learn more about what we do, and I love to write articles and do podcasts and just use LinkedIn to develop best practices to share, because we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go as a profession, as an industry, but one podcast at a time, we can start to change the mindset of people and hopefully, turn around the reputation that the profession has, unfortunately.
Beautifully said, Tammy. And thank you again for joining. And team, all of those things that Tammy referenced will be links in the show notes for today. So special thanks to Tammy and team. Thank you so much for joining the Selling Well podcast. We do this podcast to increase the performance and professionalism of B2B sales. And our belief is if we can do that, we'll actually improve the lives of professional salespeople. That's our mission with the Selling Well podcast. And this podcast is super fun, but it needs to be of value to you. And you're the folks who can let us know if it is. So please send your comments about today's podcast and all of them to me. I'm Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com. That's my personal email that I check. We love constructive criticism. Let us know what we can do to make this more valuable for you, and we will respond to each and every suggestion we get. Thanks for making them. If you liked today's podcast and loved this conversation as much as I did, Like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast, and please tell your friends, because that's how we get great guests like Tammy Gillis. Until next time, thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next time on the Selling Well.